Decades, John McCain has been a part of this failure in Washington. He has gone further, and he deserves credit for this in his party when it comes to speaking out on climate change. That's commendable. But time and time again, he has opposed investing in the alternative sources of energy that have helped fuel some of the very same projects and businesses that he's now highlighting in his campaign. He voted against biofuels, against solar power, against wind power, against a 2005 energy bill that represented the largest ever investment in renewable sources of energy, a bill that Senator McCain's own campaign co-chairman called, and I quote, the biggest legislative breakthrough we've had since he's been in the Senate. That bill wasn't perfect. It contained irresponsible tax breaks for oil companies that I consistently opposed and that I will repeal as president. But the tax credits in that bill contributed to wind power growing 45% last year, the sharpest rise in decades. If John McCain had his way, those tax credits wouldn't exist. And if we don't renew key tax incentives for alternative energy production right now, tax incentives that John McCain opposed continuing, we could lose up to 116,000 green jobs and $19 billion in investment just next year. And now he's talking about a tax credit for a more efficient car, even though he helped George Bush block these tax credits twice in the last year. After all those years in Washington, John McCain still doesn't get it. I commend him for his desire to accelerate the search for a battery that can power the cars of the future. I've been talking about this myself for the last few years, but I don't think that a $3 million prize is the way to go. When John F. Kennedy decided that we were going to go put a man on the moon, he didn't put a bounty out for some rocket scientist to win. He put the full resources of the United States government behind the project and called on the ingenuity and innovation of the American people, not just in the private sector, but also in the public sector. That's the kind of effort we need to achieve energy independence in this country, and nothing less will do. But in this campaign, John McCain's offering the same old gimmicks that will provide almost no short-term relief to folks who are struggling with high gas prices. Gimmicks that will only increase our addiction for another 4 years. Senator McCain wants a gas tax holiday that will save you, at most, 30 cents a day for 90 days. That's only if the oil companies don't just jack up the price and pocket the savings themselves, which is exactly what they did when we tried this. We tried the same thing when I was in Illinois. He's willing to spend nearly $4 billion on more tax breaks for big oil companies, including $1.2 billion for Exxon alone. He wants to open up our coastlines for drilling, a proposal that his own top economic advisor admitted won't provide any short-term relief at the pump. It's a proposal that George Bush's administration says will not produce a drop of oil, not a single drop, for at least 10 years. And by the time drilling is fully underway in 20 years, our own Department of Energy says the effect on gas prices will be, and I quote, insignificant. Insignificant. Just yesterday, Senator McCain actually admitted this. In a town hall meeting, he said, and I quote, I don't see an immediate relief, but, quote, the fact that we are exploiting these reserves would have a psychological impact that I think is beneficial. A psychological impact. In case you're wondering, in Washington speak, what that means is it polls well. It's an example of how Washington tries to convince you that they've done something to make your life better when they really didn't. The American people don't need psychological relief or meaningless gimmicks to get politicians through the next election cycle. They need real relief that will help them fill up their tanks and put food on their table. They need a long-term energy strategy that will reduce our dependence on foreign oil by investing in the renewable sources of energy that represent the future. That's what the American people need.